Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Bob Mendelsohn, and this is Season 7 of the Bob's Your Uncle podcast, and this is Episode 2. Today we're going to be talking about, it's going to be me sharing a couple stories from last week about play-by-play and trying to not miss out on anything. Maybe you're like that. Maybe you have to watch things live. You can't just wait for the results to come in. So I'm going to share a couple stories, episodes that happened for real, and then maybe an historical thing that goes well beyond leotard and the closing of Ellis Island. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff this morning, including the story that happened in the last week of a famous hero. It was Passover week, pretty significant. So stay tuned. I think you'll like this episode.
Don't know much about history. Don't know much biology. Don't know much about a science book. Don't know much about the French I took. But I do know that I love you. And I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world this would be.
On this day in history, the 12th of November, in 1990, Japanese Emperor Akihito, according to tradition, the 125th direct descendant of Jimmu, Japan's legendary first emperor, was formally enthroned on this day, nearly 2 years after the death of his father, Hirohito. In 1859, the first flying trapeze act was performed by Jules Leotard, without a net, in Paris. A one-piece garment that he popularized was named after him. In 1833, the great Leonid meteor shower, in which hundreds of thousands of meteors were observed in one night, was seen all over North America, initiating the first serious study of meteor showers. In 1954, the Immigration Reception Center at Ellis Island, New York, which processed more than 12 million immigrants, was closed. And that's the historical marker of the week.
But I do know that I love you. And I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world this would be.
It was last Monday night, the 4th of November, my birthday. The Kansas City Chiefs football team was playing at home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The rain had been falling in Kansas City all day. I had flown that morning from Sydney, and now on arrival in London, England, I began to spend time with some of the other folks at the conference we were attending. 70, maybe even 75 Jews for Jesus leaders had gathered from around the globe. Actually, I'd left over 30 hours before. The double flights, one to California and the other to London, take about 24 hours in the air alone. 30 hours included counting travel to and from the airports and layover time. Imagine the normal jet lag which hits most folks who fly 16,000 kilometers. I'm a normal guy, so a bit of jet lag makes sense. My usual style of beating that jet lag includes a lot of walking or even exercise like pickleball, tennis, during the daytime on arrival. This allows the sun's rays to shine on my arms, skin, and the resultant natural melatonin released causes an adjustment in my body clock. But this is England in November, and the amount of sunshine, well, it was a bit limited. Combine that with the delight I had in seeing so many of my colleagues with whom I had not spent time in months, some even years, caused its own energy to be released. No real sunshine, no real melatonin, no conquest of jet lag. The Chiefs game was Monday night. It was to air at a normal time in America, but this was London, and it was going to start at 1:15 in the morning on Tuesday the 5th. And any person who wanted to be alert and participate in the conference a little more fully, well, it was scheduled to begin at 9 o'clock on the 5th. Well, he would hope for some good sleep. But I couldn't wait for the results in the morning. After all, I'm a fan. A fan must wear the right colors, red and white, red and gold. I had to wear those. And I had to cheer the team to victory in the moment, live. Otherwise, they might lose. Tuesday, the 5th of November, was something else in America. It saw a substantial election take place. As an American citizen who had voted by mail weeks before, and who cared much about the campaign and its results, well, I wanted to know who won in local and national contests. The conference was terrific, and the time with colleagues was rich. But at 9 o'clock p.m., I had to go to bed. Tiredness, it won. I would have to see the results when I woke up that Wednesday morning, maybe even Wednesday night. Perhaps it was the jet lag, or maybe the energy of wanting to know the winners, but about 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up just like that. And I thought, well, I'll check my computer for any updates. You know, that's when the East Coast voting had been completed and some votes would have been in, and maybe I could watch it. Maybe. Well, needless to say, that was a mistake. The news was full on of some states' results. That caused me to sit up and watch for more. I couldn't wait. The results were coming in. I wanted it more like play-by-play, like a football game. I wanted to see what happened next. And about 5 o'clock in the morning, I lay back down, not wanting to miss out. You see, sense and sensibility didn't win on either overnight. Sleep is a normal part of an animal's day, and I finally caught up on my normal sleep the night of the 6th. Yeah, the body tells me when I'm going to sleep, that's for sure. Oh, by the way, the Chiefs won their football match in overtime, no doubt caused in part by my horizontal cheering. But now you might be wondering, why am I sharing these 2 episodes of Not Wanting to Miss Out with you? Well, let me take you back further than last Monday, to a Friday about 2,000 years ago. It was in Jerusalem. A group of Jewish men and women were almost in shock. Their candidate for rank had lost. They'd watched him get sidelined. He was, after all, their hero, their leader, their teacher. Many fancied him to be what we call in Jewish world the Messiah. And Messiah meant something different back then. The shock that hit these close followers of his, it took place just after a final meal together the night before. It was the annual feast, the Passover. They'd gathered. Everybody was coming back to Jerusalem for this event. That was normative. Lambs were being bought and sold and killed, and there was activity. Families were gathering. It was a buzz. You can imagine New Year's Eve in New York City, that kind of crowd and crowd energy. But their guy, his name was Yeshua, their guy, well, after that meal together, they went, some of them, to a nearby place there in Jerusalem, and they'd watched him be arrested, taken by the authorities that night. For what crime? It wasn't really clear. One of the guys actually took a sword and whacked off the ear of a slave, a servant there in the high priest's house, and Yeshua, this hero, took that ear, put it back on Malchus's head, and fixed it while he's being arrested, while he's being charged with sedition or something. They weren't sure. Wow, all of a sudden, their guy was now not the guy. He was being arrested, he was taken into custody, and they went into hiding pretty quickly. And then, as the night went on and the morning happened, then he was not only arrested, but he was charged with a crime, a national crime. He was then given no hope. No hope. They gave him a sentence of death, a death sentence. That's not what messiahs are supposed to have happen. Well, this Friday was pretty shocking. Pretty bad. The crowds were still milling and some were surging, like you see maybe at a rock concert with the mosh pit. There was just a big surge of people. I don't know if you've ever been in a mob. I was in those in 1970 at Washington University in St. Louis, when we surged with energy against the military-industrial complex. We wanted to tear down problems, tear down the walls. We wanted to not go to Vietnam and die. There was a lot of energy, and I remember this surge. I imagined that there in Jerusalem, which is a small town, and when a big crowd gathered because they had traveled for a pilgrimage festival, now they're going where you don't have a choice when a mob moves and you're inside the mob. Well, there he walked down what's nicknamed now Via Dolorosa, the way of suffering, the way of pain. And a fellow named Simon took his cross and carried it as they marched him, as they made him walk that death row sentence. Sure enough, then they killed him. They put some nails right there in his wrist, which back in those days would have been called in his hand, not here, because when you put nails here and then you pull out, well, it would rip out, but put it here in the metacarpal. So there he was, nailed to a cross, lifted up on the cross, and in between a couple other fellows who were thieves. It was a sad day. I mean, can you imagine your hero, your guy, the one you really thought was going to be the guy against Rome, the guy who was going to liberate the Jewish people, the guy. So the great joy of the annual feast at Passover is replaced by this utter sadness and pain, weeping, hiding, fear. What's going to happen to us? What's going to happen to our people? It's shocking. I think shock, that's what it would have been. But some kept looking and staring, almost like they couldn't miss out, like they wanted to see what the results were. Well, sure enough, the results came in. It was clear. He died. The two fellas on either side of him, they died. All three were dead. They took him down from the cross after, before Shabbat, and they took him down and they buried him. They put a big stone, they rolled a big stone in front. That's what you did back then. They didn't bury and lower into the ground, but put him in like a cave, and then rolled a big stone over it, and then put a seal like we would do with glue around it. Listen, the results were in. He'd lost. Their candidate was dismally a failure, gone. Messiahs don't die, at least according to our stories. Sadness, utter sadness, disappointment, How could we have been so wrong? How could we have made this mistake? But these folks didn't wait for the result. That was the result. That's all they wanted. They had the results. They went back. They hid together. Many of them stayed together in what's nicknamed the upper room. And there they were waiting. They didn't even know what for. Maybe just to, in catharsis, share with one another and wait out what we're supposed to do next. They were at a loss. And then Saturday and then Sunday morning early, some women went to the tomb and they were shocked. What did they see? The stone was rolled away. The guards had fallen down who were supposed to guard it with their life. The whole world was changed in a heartbeat. The women ran back, told us what had happened. They didn't know. And so we sent two of our best guys, Peter and John, went to go find out what it was. And what did they find? They found it empty. The tomb was empty. This Messiah gone. They were disoriented. And then just very quickly after that, Yeshua himself rocked up to where they were and presented himself as alive and real and visible. And all they had to do was welcome him. And new results were in. Now, the play-by-play was going to be rewritten. Now we had a brand new overtime, a new episode, a new life, if anyone received it. That's the story of Easter. That's the story of resurrection. That's the story of first fruits. There's so much more I want to tell you about this, but I want you to hear it, that the surprise of the resurrection is still available for each one of us. If we will receive him for who he is, not the Messiah we anticipated, not the Messiah we declared, not the Messiah that was going to beat up on Rome. No, this is the Messiah who's going to conquer all of the world's sins and errors, the ruin that we bring on one another. This is a new world 100%. This is new life. I invite you to write me just now, would you? Right where you're getting the podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening, on iHeartRadio, we're on all of them. Write to me, right there. Or make a comment on Facebook or on email. Heard of that? BobMendo@AOL.com. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what subjects you'd like to hear about. Guests you'd like me to interview for this new season, Season 7. As we launch into that at the end of 2024, there's so much I want to let you, the listeners, hear. I want you to ponder. I want you to process. And together, I think it's going to be a good new season of the podcast. When things seem bleak or uncertain, look up to God. He's in his heaven, and Bob's your uncle. Shalom from Kansas City.